Hi, class. Today I'll be recording two lectures. The first will be for week 5, then we'll do week 6. This week we're going to be talking about operating systems. You may know some operating system already, like on our phones, we have iOS. We're up to iOS 26 if you've updated your operating system. We have Android, we have Chrome, we have Mac OS, and we have Windows 11, which I use, and our author will discuss Linux as well. Today should be a rather short lecture, and I'll be showing you around my actual working desktop. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and we can get ready to go. So like I said, we're going to be doing system software, the operating system. We're going to look at the functions of an operating system, which is our graphic interface that connects our CPU and memory to our hard drives and our graphics cards to produce an image for us. It's also a place we hold our files and we store some programs. The most popular operating systems I just named for computers, they're Windows 11 and Mac OS. For mobile devices, it's iOS and Android. We'll look at different kinds of operating systems. We'll see how our operating system is a way to interact with the computer, and we'll see how it uses our peripherals, which we'll dig even deeper with the next lecture. Then we discuss interactions with application software, the boot process I'm not really going to spend too much on, and we'll look at how Windows manages files. So often we call system software your operating system. It can also be our BIOS, which runs when we start our computers. Then that's stored in what's called read-only memory in comparison to random access memory. RAM is what we see when we buy a 16 gig memory laptop. ROM, we never really touch it unless we boot. Our operating system, like I said, manages our hardware and our software and when we can do certain tasks. So our user interface, I call it a GUI, which is a graphic user interface, is this environment, which I'm going to show you now. This is my Windows desktop. We'll see some shortcuts here. I usually have a picture on the screen, which I don't know where it went, which I'll put back. And this is what you'll see me doing stuff in today with a right-click menu. Windows is great with its right-click menus. Okay, that's a better look. What we see on my area here, what we call this our desktop. These are shortcuts to programs that are stored in my computer. This is my taskbar. We have widgets on the left of our taskbar. On the right, we have different system functions that operate for us in the background. So I have my OneDrive connected. I have my Zoom meetings connected. I have my sound, my speakers, my battery status, and my date and time. If I use the up arrow, I should see I have Teams. I have a Kaiser print and scan function for printing. Oct is another method to authenticate, like Duo for us at the mount, Windows security, and Bluetooth. I forgot to mention my network one is here. Well, these icons work the same as my desktop. They're just quick launch icons from my taskbar. We see a search feature, which used to be Cortana. It no longer has a name. And then the most important piece is my Windows Start button. This is my window to everything, the driver of my graphic user interface. When I click this as an input, I see some applications that are pinned, meaning I don't have to look for them through a menu. Otherwise, I would click all, and I have all of the shortcuts to programs I have installed on this computer. So I'll just bring up Word. And now this is loading somewhere on my computer. And we open and close Windows and Word with these three icons here. X is close. This maximizes the screen or allows us to have multiple screens on the same display device. So that would look like this. Then I could pick another window to put there, and then I can show everything from this view. The little bar here is minimized, which will drop things into my taskbar. And then to bring it big again, I would just go and go big again. I'm just going to expand my window again. This icon here is for Windows File Explorer. This shows me where everything is stored. If I click on it, I get this window. It has some recommended files. It has files I've worked on recently. And then it has a means to navigate. So I'm going to go to this PC, and then I can see what's on my hard drive. From here, I can also see what size hard drive I have. So I have a terabit hard drive in here. If I click in here, I go to further menus. Now, all my programs are installed in this programs files or program files x86. So if I open that, I can see my Microsoft Office installation is right here. At the top of this window, we have navigation. So I can go back or I can go up. My users folder is where I store logins for people that log into this computer. I'm the only one that logs into this computer, so all of my work is getting stored in here. And that matches these shortcuts on my left with part of my window. Above here is where I'm connected. This is connected to my work OneDrive. I built a bunch of profiles, so this is going to connect to my Mount OneDrive. And I always have a means to get back home by my home button. So that takes the place of a lot of slides in our discussion. We're still going to look at the slides, and I'll reference back to here. I can look at my system controls by typing system in my search bar. From here, I learned basically everything about this computer. My operating system name, what version it is, who the manufacturer is, my computer's name, its model, its serial number, the date of the BIOS, my boot device, and so on. From here, I can also see what my software environment looks like, subcomponents for my categories, and my hardware resources. And I'm going to show you another menu by going to name. So this is my system in about. So I have a terabit of hard drive space, a graphics card, which we'll learn about with my next lecture, of 128 megs. I have 32 gigs of memory, and I have an Intel Core Ultra 7 processor. This is a very fast device. It is brand new. It's Microsoft's latest laptop, named the Surface laptop. I got it to replace an older IBM X1 Carbon. This one has a bigger monitor than my last computer. It's thinner. It has less things actually built in that you can plug into. For me, the bigger screen, the touch screen, and the easeability of the keyboards were drivers for me to upgrade to this device. All things we'll look about in my next lecture. From here, we can see our Bluetooth and our devices, where we add devices. I can see network and all my networks, including Bluetooth. We have our Wi-Fi settings. If I had VPN running, it would be here. I could share my hotspot, my internet connection with someone else, but I don't. And airplane mode, which we're familiar with our phones. Personalization we had seen before. This is just showing how everything looks to me. I can see my applications here. I can see what's available in my startup. This is everything that can be loaded when this computer starts. I don't load everything you see here because I want a faster boot rather than a slower boot, and I choose when I open devices. I can see the accounts logged into this device. I have my time and language settings and my accessibility settings, which is a key thing today in education. We're realizing we have to put out products that are accessible for all types of people, all types of learners. And a lot of things I can alter on this screen to make it more accessible to me. We have privacy and security, where we look at my antivirus, my spyware, and my virtual firewall. Lastly, Windows Update. We'll learn what operating systems it's important to keep them updated. You see mine is up to date. Vendors put out updates to the operating system to fix problems that they've had when they've released different types of software. So that's why we do our Windows updates or our Mac OS updates or our phone updates. So in a nutshell, that's the Windows 11 environment. I didn't show you my print menu. This is where I can add printers. And if I were on the network where I am on the network that I print from, so I can add a device from here. And this is my default printer. It may not be on. Oh, it is. So I've just added that printer. And I'll leave that as my main printer. I have the printer downstairs. I've installed that as well. And back to me. So operating systems can be single use, which are all the ones I've talked about before, or multi-user operating systems. And these are for server environments. Remember, we've discussed servers in some kind of detail. They're multi-connection, multi-user computers, usually in a data center with many servers connected in the same rack to provide scalability for a computing environment. They use operating systems like Windows Server or Linux. We've seen my desktops and icons, and we've seen how to navigate. We've seen the inputs into my operating system. It's our mice and keyboard, pens. This particular device is touchscreen, so I can just swipe up and around to our slide that's really detailing our different operating systems. Like I said, Windows is the biggest operating system used by businesses. Mac OS is biggest in our environment in education and those in the Mac ecosystem. Google has its Chrome operating system, which offer us a low cost computer that really only connects to the internet for any of its work. It doesn't allow you to install programs, but the price is superb. Used a lot in high schools and middle schools. Linux is often used on servers, as I said. It is the open source version of our operating system called Unix. We will see it on some laptops that have application developers working on it because they really program for a server, and that's what that is. Android is on our cell phones made by Google, and we don't see iOS, but that's our iPhones. And our author shows us who is the most popular. We've heard about Linux already. We upgrade OS when we're told to. And we don't often have to be quick adopters. Like for myself, I'm a little more of a risk taker when it comes to operating systems. I was one of the first to update Windows 11 and then push it to the company I work for. We were early adopters of it. Often we let things run for about a year before we adopt a change, because changing operating system is a big deal. And like I said previously, we always run our updates to make sure we're up to date. All the devices on our pictures here have some kind of operating system. Real-time operating systems, it says for repetitive series of tasks. This is a speed camera on a highway, our integrated device in our automobiles. This is a point of sale system. And this looks like a Bloomberg terminal, which is I have to pause our recording. And I'll be right back. Sorry for the brief pause. I had a delivery that I had to sign for, but let's get back at it. We talked about server operating systems. Often called network operating systems, meaning they're used for devices that are on a network or server operating systems. I love this slide. Let's see. So we see the circle in the middle is our operating system. It works when we do something. So now I have my mouse with a little color ball to it to see my movements. So a user enters a command into the operating system. Then what it does is it calls the CPU and says, hey, CPU, we need to start Microsoft Word. Okay. The operating system acknowledges that. It goes to memory and says, hey, memory, we need the power to start Microsoft Word. Memory says, okay. Back to the operating system, back to our software. Excuse me. Great. We have our operating system. We have our software, I should say. Yep, we can do that. We start Microsoft Office. We do another interface, maybe to print. operating system to Word, memory to Word, to printer, boom, we have our output. Center of everything in the computer is our operating system. The window we see in A is, it's probably from a command prompt, which is an application in Windows, but it's showing a Microsoft DOS or disk operating system environment. And it was the first operating system for personal computers. This is a screen from a Mac computer, probably the same age as this Microsoft DOS. Think middle 80s. Mac has always been a graphic user interface operating system. They were also the first to bring us a mouse. Not until Microsoft Windows 3.1 did we get a graphic user interface and a mouse. The Windows operating system world changed entirely with the advent of Windows 95. And from it, we got the Start button and File Explorer and Solitaire. All of these are still with us today, some 30 years ago. So 30-year-old technology is still showing up in an operating system today. But our GUI is our means to get to our operating system. We're not going to talk about processing. We'll talk more about RAM and hard drives in our next lecture, but this is RAM or random access memory. We'll call it as DRAM or dynamic RAM. It's what sends data and instructions to our operating system and to our storage. Hard drive or storage is not the same as memory. Memory is volatile, meaning it stores a command and then releases it. So this is always in motion. We can think of hard drives as us and stop. If you want a real life example, say we're on campus and we're on one side of the campus to another. Say we had baseball practice and we had to get back to Henry's to grab the burger we ordered. Well, we could walk there and eventually get there. It would take quite a while. That's maybe 4 gigabits of RAM. We could get a motorized scooter to get from both places, and we have maybe 16 gigs of RAM. Or we take our car and get to Henry's really quick, 32 gigs of RAM. So the more RAM we have, the faster programs open and close. Storage, this is showing a magnetic hard drive with a bunch of disks and a needle writing data to it, is where data stays at rest. If we think we're running out of memory, we can allocate part of this hard drive as virtual memory or a swap file or paging memory. So we could maybe make a 32 gig paging file for our 32 gig memory to emulate 64. We've seen our Windows system environment already, but I can show you Device Manager real quick. And I just started to type dev, and this is what we're seeing on our screen. This is all the components that are installed on my computer. If any of these were not working, they would have an X to the icon. So say my camera wasn't working, I can see which camera it is, and then maybe update the drivers or the application program that makes that device talk to the operating system. We don't need to talk about APIs. We don't really need to talk about the starting of the computer, the boot process, but I will go through it real quick. In my next video, it's going to be really short, and you're going to be required to watch a 17-minute video that I got from YouTube, which discusses all the components in this desktop computer. This ROM chip is where we store our BIOS. We see step one, we turn the CPU on, and our BIOS starts up. BIOS will then tell us what we have to do to boot up. And we go through a test procedure to see if all our hardware is working properly. If it wasn't, we get a very loud ding. Once everything tests properly, ROM will stop working. We'll tell the CPU we're good to load our operating system, and our operating system loads. And all those startup programs I showed you earlier, they'll load as well. We start up our hard drive and start activating our memory. Errors in our boot process, we either roll back applications to power our devices. We can run Windows. This is for Windows. There are options with our boot. We can hit F12 in our boot process to go to a different menu to maybe diagnose a problem and be able to fix it, or we could reset our operating system, or we could turn it off and turn it back on and hope everything is working properly. Otherwise, maybe you're calling someone like me. We talked about the desktop taskbar and start menu. I didn't show you pinning, but this is what happens when we pin an application. It comes in here, and I have things that I use all the time. But if I wanted to maybe, I don't know, put my clock there, I can right click. It's already pinned, so I can't do anything there. So let me say maybe Okta. So I right clicked on Okta Verify and hit pin to start. And now if I hit my start button again, Okta is now shown. We have a navigation here because I have my viewing area filled up already. Virtual desktops are things we can do to look like we're running two computers at a time. And I do so by clicking this button right here. And I would click new desktop. Now we see I have a new desktop. We don't see Zoom running. So let me go back to desktop one. That's a way, if you're using two different functions and working two different jobs, that's a means to be able to separate them. So Mac OS and Windows are not compatible. Mac does have an environment where you can load Windows, but the files or their operating systems are not compatible, but they really do the same thing. Usually we'll install Mac on Mac computers, of course, so we can run Linux and Windows in a virtual type environment. We could do the same with Linux in the Windows world. More often than not, though, with cloud technologies, we'll create and store cloud desktops with these operating systems so we could work in the different environments much more efficiently. We've seen device management and file management. A file is just something we store from work we are doing. We store them in folders in our Windows Explorer. And we can see maybe from my downloads. Files are indicated here. This is all things I've downloaded and decide to keep. This does take up a lot of space if we're running low on hard drives. This is the first place we go to try and delete stuff. Not caring much about the path because we don't really type paths anymore. But here we can see this full file path, for lack of a better word. It tells me where this sbanthony.jpg is. This is what I would have to do if I were in this environment. I would have to type this command here to be able to get to where this picture is. That's the way we used to do things in Windows before, well, in PCs before Windows 3.1. Now we use our File Explorer, which we've already talked about. Here's some common names. In the Microsoft world, we have a name of a file and an extension which tells our CPU what application load. We see .docx is Word, XLSX is a workbook, and PPTX is a presentation. We have the ability to move files with our copy, cut, and paste features. We can delete to go to our recycle bin. We can see I have a full recycle bin. And to empty the recycle bin, I would right click and go empty. I'm back in my download folder. And if I were to right click here, I would get some menus. And we could change the view of our icons. We can change the sort and how to group. We can create a new file or folder. We can see properties of a folder and more. Or I can right click and get cut, copy, rename, share, and delete. I can send it to my phone if my phone was connected. I can add as a favorite, or I can have Copilot help me. I'm just seeing what else I want to talk to you about. We'll talk about antivirus and firewalls in a later lecture. We're not going to talk about system utility programs because we don't really use them anymore. We talked about accessibility already, and we're done for this week. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you soon.